Hello, and welcome to the Fabric Spotlight, a series of talks with CXOs, infrastructure executives, where we discuss everything cloud, infrastructure, enterprise, all those things. Today, it's my pleasure to speak with Keerti Melkote, founder of Aruba Networks, which is an HPE company. Hi, Keerti. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Hey, my pleasure, Prabakar. Great to reconnect again.
Fantastic. So, it would be great to share your journey and, what has shaped your career, current interests, a little bit of a setup up front.
I grew up in Hyderabad, India, and although my family, many of my listeners hopefully will know I'm from Karnataka originally. And so I get the benefit of both the cities, Hyderabad and Bangalore.
Wow, two mega cities.
Two mega cities for IT in particular, right? And so I came here to study my master's, after my master's, worked at companies like Intel and Cisco and a couple of startups for the first 10 years of my career. And then in 2001, I got the urge, the motivation to go do something on my own, which is what turned out to be Aruba. And I was with Aruba for the last 20 years, just recently opting in for a retirement. Although I'm still right now employed by HP for the rest of the year, mostly in transition mode.
Okay. I see. I think it agrees with you very well. You're looking great.
Thank you. It's been a good summer. It's been a good, relaxing summer with the family.
Excellent. So, we of course share a long history together. We shared an office at NetScaler and everything. And since then, you have been a great supporter for the Fabric, personally invested, and were instrumental in getting Aruba to invest as well. And we explored collaborations. So, any thoughts on the journey together that you would like to share?
Oh, absolutely, Prabakar. I think it's fair to say that Aruba got its, the ideas came to my mind while I was, helping you and Jagdish out at NetScaler with a small project. I think you wanted to evaluate, if I remember, how to apply NetScaler technology to 3G.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we are going to later in the talk about 5G.
Yes.
But back in that day, I remember talking about things like WAP and application delivery over highly lossy 3G networks.
Right.
And but that was the genesis of our starting of our relationship, right? And we stayed in touch since then. I watched you and your career blossom. Obviously, you've been super successful too. And it's when you and Rajan came with the idea of Fabric, it immediately appealed to me because there was a gap I felt in the industry where incubating enterprise future ideas was missing. VCs obviously fund a lot of companies, and enterprise is certainly a part of it, but something that was focused, that could help both propel the next generation of companies, but also solve what are problems, known problems. But for various reasons, a company like Aruba or VMware, or take any other tech company, is unable to pursue that particular idea. Sometimes you want disruption. To disrupt, eat your young is one of the things that everyone talks about in the Valley. It's very difficult to do it from the inside. Sometimes you have to fund sort of disruptive ideas from the outside. So I always believed in a model like the Fabric. And when you and Rajan came with it, I was like, perfect. Somebody who I know and trust is going to go do this, which is what fundamentally led to both me investing early, getting Aruba to support the model. And, congrats, you guys have been super successful. I'm a very happy investor as well.
Thank you very much. Hope to continue that.
Yeah, exactly. Now the bar is high, right? You need to keep your track record going.
Yeah. Now, I think people would like to hear a little bit more from you about your own entrepreneurship. You have been tremendous success as an entrepreneur, and maybe you can walk us through the process that made Aruba such a success, first as an independent company, and then also, kind of a rocket ship, even within HPE, which is kind of unusual. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize as best I can, Prabakar, because that really represents the last 20 years of my career. So, a few things stand out. I think the first time I went fundraising for Aruba, and I had this fascination with Wi-Fi technology. And somehow I felt internally that Wi-Fi, if done right, would become like the de facto way to connect into networks. And but at that time it was difficult to see because we still needed PCMCIA cards to plug into laptops to get Wi-Fi going. And when I went to VCs, many VCs felt like Wi-Fi. Why are you making a bet? Because the concept was, it was a commoditized technology. You could buy access points at Price Electronics for $100. How can that market support a startup? And yet for me, the fundamental, I had spent my first 10 years looking at the LAN. And the LAN was all wired, right? Ethernet was new and we plugged, as I used to tell the story, my first 10 years of my career, I figured out how to plug the world to the internet. The next 20 years, I've been unplugging the world from the internet, but still keeping them connected. I think the key story there is disruption, right? Because I just felt like if wireless is done right, that it could be disruptive to the LAN market, which was a massive market, billions of dollars. And that was the basic bet. So I was very customer focused from the very beginning. So talked to a bunch of customers, all resonated with the pain points, which is security and manageability and so on. So I took that to VCs. Some VCs believed in it and obviously supported me in the journey. So I think it was that, making a bet on a disruptive technology. It was not all obvious. I didn't see the iPad happening or the iPhone happening, or Ethernet ports ultimately becoming optional on laptops, which was not entirely clear at the time. So and you do the usual. We were a textbook enterprise startup in the sense we followed crossing the chasm to a T in terms of picking your initial target markets. How do you cross the chasm? How do you build that initial velocity and then blossom into a broader horizontal enterprise company? And for us, higher education, federal government, hospitality, these were some of the early verticals. And that's what allowed us to go public, right? The market was massive. And, we went public in 5 years, which in today's terms is lightning fast because people seem to be pushing out the going public more and more. But I think even beyond that, right, the 20-year journey is just a conviction in three things: in innovation and the power of disruption. And, we have jointly seen SD-WAN as a market come to bear, which disrupted the WAN market, right? So you have to keep watching sort of what's around the curve and what could potentially disrupt what today might be meaty large markets, and a commitment to innovating in that, either organic innovation or inorganic innovation. That was sort of number one. And second, I think, is just a big commitment to the people and making sure that the people that walked in through the Aruba doors felt like they were part of a mission, and that they felt the impact of what they did on a daily basis. And we had a saying at Aruba called the biggest small company. That was our aspiration, because customers like small companies. Customers like them because they're intimate, they are responsive, nimble, and yet they want the resources of a big company to support them. So we wanted to juxtapose both in that saying and build a culture around that idea of being intimate, small, family style company, but that could scale and become big. And so those were, I would say, that the key bets. I would say along the way, I had the good fortune of having a lot of entrepreneurs join me on the Aruba journey, a lot of great team members. And it's always about rowing together in one direction as a team. You'll never agree all the time, but ensuring the atmosphere is conducive to that growth and innovation, personal growth and professional growth. I think that, to me, 20 years later, probably is more important than anything else, any other technology that I might have focused on and worked on. Yeah, so that's a little summary of my 20 years. I keep going back to teams and how we end up motivating and leading teams over the long haul.
So I'm sure that's a lot of fun. Once you got acquired into HPE, how did that change? It seemed like you still ran it as a separate company within the large company.
Yeah, when HP approached us, this was actually HP, even before HP, Meg Whitman was the CEO. they were looking to, they had seen that wireless was eventually going to become an important, very important technology. And their business was mainly on the wired LAN side. HP switching is a pretty large BU, and they had done their acquisitions, 3Com, before that. And so it was a pretty sizable team, sizable business. And they were looking for someone to come and lead the whole thing. So the way they structured the acquisition was a reverse acquisition. They said Aruba, HP acquires Aruba, but Aruba acquires HP networking. And that was the model. And so both Meg and then later Antonio, who was the executive sponsor for the acquisition, basically said, bring the teams together and go attack the joint market opportunity. And I was very, again, talking about people and teams and culture, I was very fortunate to inherit an amazing team in HP switching. There were in many ways, they are a well-kept secret in the networking industry. They just keep plugging away with new ASICs, new software all the time. And it was very energizing to see a equally committed entrepreneurial team on the inside of HP.
Nice.
So bringing them together was easier than, frankly, I thought. And since the last 6 years now, since that acquisition, we've innovated across both Wi-Fi, switching, acquired SD-WAN technology.
Yeah, that was
suffice to say, modernized the whole networking stack for HP along the way.
It's great. So, as you are aware, the Fabric is really focused around cloud infrastructure. So before we kind of get into the Aruba business, I think we'll kind of touch upon a little bit about the cloud in general. So what we are seeing is a huge acceleration in adoption of cloud by the enterprise. From HPE point of view, what you saw, do you think that public clouds will completely take over, or it will be a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud? What is kind of the strategic viewpoint?
Yeah, so I obviously had a very, very close view of this whole thing, right? And the short answer is, I think hybrid cloud is here to stay. That is the model that I see evolving over the long term. But the operating model of the cloud is what is going to come to basically be the way of doing things, whether you're doing it in a private data center or running your application in a public cloud. The infrastructural components underneath that allows you to do that multi-cloud, hybrid cloud model is going to be highly automated, borrowing the page from cloud operations, right? DevOps and cloud ops, and how you end up embracing that highly automated structures. Doesn't matter whether you are running it or you're renting somebody's infrastructure. That automation is, I think, where the key is, and automation leads to all, basically software. And so the key opportunities we saw was not so much whether a private data center infrastructure will stay or not. It is how do you transform the operating model of a private data center to resemble that of a cloud? Because economically, it is proven that it is actually a more superior model than running it historically the way we used to, right?
Right. No, that's a very good observation, that even with the hybrid cloud, there will be some kind of harmonization of the operating model using automation. That's very interesting. So the other side of the coin, if you will, is concerns over security, right? People kind of dismiss it, saying that, oh, clouds are more secure than your data center, but there is a whole bunch of other issues that come into being because this is distributed. People are, there is ransomware now, there is kind of application layer security. So what are people thinking now? I mean, are they completely comfortable with how the security is put together? Are there holes, or are there innovation opportunities? What is
I think there is huge innovation opportunities, because I think security, while the cloud guys have reasonably well explained their security model to the most doubting customers, take highly regulated industries, whether it is DoD, federal government, healthcare, even finance, right? Just the other day, I saw a large bank now completely embracing the cloud. So I think they've gotten over that initial hurdle of is the infrastructure secure? Can I be compliant? Can I give my board assurance that what I'm running the infrastructure is actually secure? I think they probably have met the same bar as what a private data center would meet. But that doesn't mean things are secure, right? I mean, we know that, and there's a lot more work to be done on the security side. And so security, I think, is going to be pretty foundational for a long time to come. I think it's going to drive a significant amount of innovation in rethink in the way we built software, infrastructure software and application software. And that's a ripe vector, I would say, for disruption of what I would call traditional and legacy software stacks that are out there, all the way from the hypervisor up through any other layer, including below that, if you want to think about hardware root of trust and how you enable a trusted, authenticated model, a tested model to run on top of any infrastructure out there.
So kind of to shift gears a little bit. You talked about the 3G in the NetScaler time, and then now there is 5G and all of that. There seems to be a lot of excitement these days around edge cloud, distributed cloud, 5G, what that means to applications, and what that means to cloud-based infrastructure services. So what's your perspective on these things?
Yeah, I think the edge cloud is a very interesting extension. I mean, it's not a new concept by any means. If you talk to Akamai, they'll tell you they were the first to innovate on an edge cloud. If you talk to Exodus, they will tell you they were the first to innovate on a cloud.
Well,
right? You'll remember that. So I think these concepts have been around. It is more about how do you enable compute and storage and infrastructure capabilities at various points along the continuum, from what I call the deep edge, which is the endpoint or wherever an IoT device is deployed, all the way into the cloud. And there's a lot of different points of presence, right? You have the customer edge, you have the network edge, you have the provider edge, you have the data center edge, then you have the core of the data center. So when people say edge, I go, okay, which edge are you talking about first? I think it's important to disambiguate that and then talk about what kind of compute lies at what type of edge. Again, where I go to is not so much the importance of edge compute, but what is the operating model for the edge infrastructure and how applications will be deployed. So again, I think software infrastructure will be an important element to enabling that. And now, of course, if you follow the trends of wavelength by Amazon and Verizon and others, right, they're bringing cloud capabilities to the edge all the way down to a cell tower. And with 5G, there's a unique opportunity to refactor the data plane. Until 4G, the data plane used to be, if you were to send packets on your cell phone, it would show up in Seattle and then onto the internet.
Yeah.
But with 5G, the likelihood that your packet will show up on the internet in Palo Alto or somewhere closer to where you are is much higher, right? So that distributed data plane facilitates distributed compute. And therefore, you have the opportunity to now run applications close to the edge. And these applications tend to be, if you look backwards, caching, video, these kinds of things. But if you look forwards, I think they're more low latency IoT based type applications where you can really do things like self-driving cars better or self-driving infrastructure or other types of low latency requirements that might emerge with edge compute in mind. So I see 5G and edge compute sort of being two sides of the same coin in terms of enabling the next decade of innovation, which is why I think there's so much excitement there.
So, Keerti, kind of transitioning to a different side of 5G, right? That's the consumer side. And then from the enterprise side, there seems to be a push to have some kind of a private network based on 5G. Started with 4G LTE, but seems to be kind of like gaining acceleration with 5G, private 5G. So that raises the question of how should enterprises think about, say, Wi-Fi 6 and 5G? Are they competing? Are they complementary, overlapping? How should they work on it? And what kind of innovations can happen there?
Yeah, I think they will be complementary for a very long time to come. And in fact, if you look at Wi-Fi, there's a couple of things that are going for it. One is the fact that it's unlicensed spectrum. So you don't have to pay for spectrum, it's free. and you can operate private infrastructure on it, which means all your applications on your LAN, your connectivity, security, all of those things translate over very nicely into the Wi-Fi world. Yet with 5G, on the telco side, you just buy a bucket of bits, right? It's bandwidth you buy, and then you try to pay the carriers that on the license spectrum. So enterprises for the longest time had no ability to go take advantage of some of the advances on the license spectrum technology, 3G, 4G, 5G. And the key advantages, technically, if you boil it down, it is basically down to the fact that you can operate at a higher envelope than Wi-Fi can, which means you get more range for a given, for an LTE or a 5G signal versus a Wi-Fi signal. You can go further. The second benefit, and this is arguable, but they claim that that 5G is better for low latency or more bounded latency. I shouldn't say low latency, Wi-Fi can be pretty low, but more bounded latency where the jitter characteristics are better. Those two are the claims that they'll be better. So now you look at Wi-Fi, where it dominates is connecting users, right? Your laptop, my mobile phones, iPads, these are all connected over Wi-Fi, and we suck up as much bandwidth as Wi-Fi can give us. Yet there are a whole variety of applications, mostly I would say on the IoT side, and think of outdoors, which is, I would say, still disconnected as far as enterprises are concerned. They may be connected for carriers, but enterprises have no presence. And think of ports, think of oil wells, many outdoor operations that still remain disconnected. And so I think the first low-hanging fruit for enterprise to take advantage of 5G will be there, where they have better need for more range and more coverage in their operations. And then secondarily on the lower latency or bounded latency type applications. So I think I see that, and I see Wi-Fi forever coexisting with 5G for the longest time. Maybe the last thing I'll say is 5G is also good for traditional voice. And I say traditional voice because we do FaceTime, Zoom, WhatsApp calls, everything on Wi-Fi now. So I can't say voice doesn't work over Wi-Fi, clearly does. But for traditional phone number based dialing, Wi-Fi calling still leaves some, it's the way that technology is developed still leaves something to be desired. But on the other hand, cellular calling, normal the way we make calls on our cell phones, it works better. So I think there's an application for voice back into the enterprise infrastructure with 5G.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Another aspect of this, the branch, or rather the lack thereof, is this. Now there is a surge of opportunities for innovation in supporting remote or hybrid work. The new normal. So you are also aware of a couple of our companies that I worked and are working in that area, IoTM and CloudBrink in particular. CloudBrink particularly, the founder there. So any thoughts what you have seen from an Aruba perspective on the innovations there, and any other companies that you are engaged with in that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this, because this is probably the one question I've gotten the most in the last 2.5, 3 months is what do you see, how do you see the enterprise network change because of this hybrid work model? And I think it's very clear that hybrid work is here to stay, whether it is a 2 days at home, 3 days at work, or wherever you want to draw the slider in terms of percentage, you can. But it's clear that the home as a place to work is going to be important. And so is what I call the third place, which is the Starbucks coffee shop. Or whatever, right? So I think the good news is that overnight, the entire landscape changed, right? We all went home, stayed home, and yet here we are continuing to be productive. Some would argue even more productive than we were if we were in the office. And so I think it proves that there is the traditional sort of mindset of you can't get work done at home has completely been destroyed. Now the question is, for enterprises, how do they invest? Do they invest in large campuses? Do they invest in small micro branches? Do they invest in the home and make that an extension of the enterprise? So what is the new enterprise edge look like?
Yeah.
And I think that is I still draw a sliding scale depending on the type of industry you're in. Some industries you'll still need to go into work. Some industries you can be totally remote, right? And so the opportunity landscape will also move along that. I think, but it's clear to me that micro branch and home are going to be very, very important locations. And trying to solve for those in a secure way is going to be very important, because the top question that every board will ask is, okay, this is great that you're keeping productivity going. How do you ensure that everything is still compliant? In the LAN world, people would say, look, here are my ports, here's my Wi-Fi, I'm monitoring everything 24/7, and here's my compliance report to you, to the board members, to the audit committee. But you can't do that on the home network, right? So how do you build capabilities that allow you to be compliant with enterprise policy? I think those are the areas of innovation. And I think the opportunity is certainly opened up in terms of the, going beyond the campus, if you will, to
absolutely. Yeah. So you have a branch of one,
ultimately a branch of one. Correct.
That's great. So thank you very much for all of those kind of like the infrastructure related questions. We can shift gears a little bit, come back to Keerti, the person. So what's next for Keerti? So given your track record, I'm sure people are like saying, oh, what is he going to do next? So what is up next?
That is the way of Silicon Valley. It seems the external pressure is more than the internal pressure right now. So right now there is, to be honest, I am still an HP employee till the end of the year. It's a long transition I've agreed to, simply because 20 years is a significant amount of time at one place. So you build up a lot of relationships and takes time to unwind. So I'm doing that. I'm taking my time to really relearn the new technologies that, as an operator, it's very difficult. Honestly, you're moving from, you get a bird's eye view and you kind of make quick judgment calls. But with some time, you have the opportunity to at least engage one level deeper than I normally would have. So I'm trying to learn the new buzzwordy stuff that is out there, whether it's AI or blockchain or whatever else you might think of. And enjoying my time with the kids. I think that is a unique opportunity that I feel like I should not lose sight of.
Yeah.
And so engaging with them, and so far it's my work first, everything else second, but at least for the next year, I'm going to be work second, everything else first. And then
you deserve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So we'll keep in touch and see what you are up to.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely not sit still. There's a lot of entrepreneurs looking for, advice, and I tell everybody advice is free. It's up to you want to take it or not.
we will certainly reach out to you about that.
Absolutely.
So I think on that the advice front, actually, I think maybe some parting advice for our audience, the entrepreneurs in our audience. You have founded companies and have had a lot of exposure to various startups, coming to Aruba and HP and all of that. So what do you see, what advice would you give for entrepreneurs on success tips and pitfalls to avoid and things like that?
Yeah, I think a few big sort of nuggets for me that always held true is when you're looking at your next journey, entrepreneurial journey, try to solve problems that have big billion-dollar markets behind them, or at least have the potential to be billion-dollar markets, because you're going to work very hard as an entrepreneur, no matter what, whether the problem is $100 million problem or $1 billion problem. So you might as well work on problems that are big. So that's sort of number one. And number two is just surround yourself with people that can challenge you, that you can trust. It's always going to be more than one. One person can only do so much, right? It's going to be a team effort. And so for founders in particular, this is very important. The impact founders have on the team and the culture is going to be everlasting. So give some thought, proactive thought to what kind of company you want to build. And not technology, but what kind of company it is for the people that work within it, for the customers that embrace that company, for the partners that work with you. What does that company feel like and work like? I think that is not normal for most founders to think about, especially early founders, because we tend to gravitate to technology.
Yeah.
But I think it is important, it's really important to write it down and iterate. Like everything else, you can iterate, but have them written down and have a contract with people that come to you as to what they can expect in your company. And the third is stick with it for the long haul. It always works. Sometimes it feels, startups are very topsy-turvy. And so don't lose hope when things are going bad. Don't get too elated when things are going well, because nothing lasts forever. And keep the long picture in mind, because success takes time. Yes, there is a lucky few for which, things happen and you get catapulted to huge success very quickly. But for the most part, I find, perseverance and applying yourself over a long period of time inevitably works, as long as you are humble, you keep making the right bets and keep the customer in mind as you do that.
Those are some very good insights and advice. So it was a great talk. Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for sparing the time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Prabakar. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to continue to engage with your Fabric ecosystem.
Looking forward to that. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back with another Spotlight episode soon.